Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, for that warm introduction. And hello, fellow Toastmasters. How many of you have had a mentor in your life? So if you're a member of MPS Toastmasters, you should all be raising your hand, of course. But how many of you have had a mentor who's had a deep, meaningful impact on your life? Awesome. Yeah, I definitely have too. And today I'm going to tell you about one of the darkest moments in my life, or periods in my life, and a man who came beside me, took me under his wing, and mentored me, and really showed me what it meant to care about somebody else. So, set the stage for you. The year was 2015, so 3 years ago, and there were a lot of new things going on in my life. As far as my job, I had just switched battalions, and I was moving into a new position on a staff, which was the first time I'd been on a staff. I was the assistant operations officer for our battalion. I had a new boss coming in, who was the operations officer, and then my boss's boss was also new, the battalion commander. As far as my personal life, we had recently bought a house, and we had a lot of new projects going on in the house. We were trying to renovate a 100-year-old house, and so that was kind of a stressful thing in our lives. And then as far as my family goes, my first grandparent had just died, my dad's dad, and one of the biggest events in my life so far, my daughter was born that summer. So with all these kind of stressful things going on in both my life and my wife's life, we weren't getting along super well, and my wife decided that she was going to go and stay with her sister for 6 months with her daughter. So at this point in my life, when that happened, I kind of felt like my life was in some ways falling apart. And so this man who really became a mentor in my life was actually my boss at the time. And we had known each other previously through an organization called the Navigators up at Fort Lewis in Washington State. He was married. He had 2 young girls at the time. He now has a 3rd boy, and he was a bit of a workaholic. Our battalion commander was a man that was pretty demanding, and this mentor of mine, his name's Brian, he, being a bit of a workaholic, he would stay super late hours at night working on all these projects. And there was a point in time where he would joke about how little time he got to spend with his family, and I think over the year that we worked together, I think he could count on his hand the number of times that he ate dinner with his family, which is kind of sad. So by no means he was a perfect man, but he did have a lot of qualities that I really respected. And then the situation that developed when my wife left, I felt like I was in a pretty big rut at the time. And since he knew me personally and we worked together, he knew what was going on, and he came to me and he approached me and he asked if I would be willing to meet with him every morning at 6 a.m. at a place called Galloping Gerties, which you might have been cogitating on. And just to meet with him, to talk with him, and so I said yes, and so we would show up at Gerties at 6 a.m. in the morning. We'd sit at our usual table. I would order a cup of coffee, he usually had tea, and we'd start it off by just praying together really briefly, and then most of the rest of the time we would just sit in silence and read our Bibles independently, pray independently, and then after about an hour we'd be done. We'd pay our bill typically, and then and since we were in about roughly the same physical shape, we'd go work out. Typically we'd go running together and we'd talk about what we'd read. So the impact that this guy had on my life was huge. We did this for about 2 months straight, and while he wasn't spending a lot of time with his family, he chose to commit hours and hours of his week to be with me and kind of mentor me through what I was going through at the time and be a sounding board. So I look back on this period of time and what he did for me as a period. While it was a dark period of my time, it was probably the most fruitful period of time in my life and the time where I grew the most personally. So there were 3 principles that I learned from him and I've tried to apply throughout throughout the rest of my life so far. So number one was just his example that he set for me. He was certainly a man that selflessly served other people, and he showed me, he not only told me what it was like to be a wise man, but he showed me on a daily basis. Also, he was an accountability partner for me. I was able to talk with him about the struggles that I had in my life, and then I knew that he would come back with words of wisdom and follow up with me and just give me advice on the direction of my life. Also, there's a principle I call doubling down, which is inviting people to spend time with you in something that you're already doing and do it with them. So he was already doing the things that we're doing at Galloping Gerties in the mornings, and he just invited me to come along and do it with him. Another thing that we're doing is running and working out together, so same principle of doubling down. And I kind of used that while working on my house with all these various projects that I had, inviting people to come along with me and work and spend time talking with them as well. So I've shared this story of what happened in my life with you all today. My boss was a man I truly respect, who not only mentored me, but did it daily, showing me what it means to be a servant to others. The impact that he had on my life is great, and I challenge you to find somebody in your own lives to share the lessons that you've learned, to mentor them, and to have a deep impact on their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, guests, fellow Toastmasters. Gordon, great speech. So Gordon was doing, this project introduced the value of mentorship and Toastmaster views of mentors and proteges. The purpose of the project is to clearly define how Toastmasters envisions mentoring. And conjugate on that for a little bit before I begin. But the overview is right to present a 5 to 7 minute speech about a time when you were a protege. Obviously you did that. Share the impact and importance of having a mentor. The speech is not a report on content of this project, but rather your views on something in the past that you share with us. All right, Gordon told me to look at 3 things while doing his speech. Eye contact. Your eye contact was great throughout. Your second was filler words, and became a filler word for you throughout the speech. Ahs and ums, there was just a few at the end, so you did really well on that. So I have 4 sustains and 2 improves for you, Gordon. So first, sustain, great intro involving the audience, great background that got us involved in this scenario, setting the scene for how your mentor came into your life to assist in your time of crisis. Second sustain would be, you evoked emotion by coming away from the lectern, sitting down, putting us in that scene to kind of understand what you and your mentor were kind of going through when you were in that restaurant. Third sustain, great closing, and you challenge the audience and to find a worthy mentor in our lives here. Fourth sustain would be leaving the lectern to set the scene for us in that restaurant. You shared 3 principles of selflessness. Think of others before self, accountability, and doubling down. So for your improves, I would say introducing the principles kind of late in the speech. Maybe do that at the beginning. Say my mentor introduced 3 principles to me that I live my life by in the beginning. And second improve is that use of the filler word and. I think you said you were sick the past few days. It kind of happens to all of us. I'm sure there's a lot more dings that I have in this evaluation. But great speech. Thanks for sharing that. And thank you, everyone.